The deadline to tender contracts to arbitration-eligible players has passed, which means there are quite a few new free agents out on the market. We'll tell you which of them should be of interest to the Mariners coming up. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, November 24th, 2025. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. My name is Ty Gonzalez, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Colby Patnode. We're two lifelong Mariners fans who've been covering the team for over half a decade, and today we're going to open up the mailbag like we do here every single Monday. But before we get into it, I want to shout out our title sponsor today, Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's get into your questions. Jeff is going to kick us off here on Mailbag Monday, wanting to know which non-tendered player makes the most sense for the roster. Oh, buddy, you've made the mistake of asking us to condense such a broad question down to one singular player. Brevity is not our strong suit, so we're going to name a bunch of players. Colby, go. Name some guys. Go.
Adolis Garcia.
That's what you all want us to say, right? I assume most of you want us to say Adolis Garcia.
I don't know. You know what's interesting about the list here? Very little of interest from the National League. Pretty much everybody that is like interesting to give a major league contract to is on the American League side. So there's always relievers. Which is kind of a valuable asset for the Mariners, and the Yankees dumped a couple of them that are pretty interesting. Mark Leiter, I know he didn't have a very good year, but you can kind of coincide his struggles directly to him going to New York. He was pretty darn good before that. Jake Cousins. There you go. Is that Kirk Cousins' cousin?
Yeah, he's Kirk Cousins' cousin.
Yeah. He's coming off of an injured year, so he might be an interesting add as well. Also, Ian Hamilton, WSU alum. He had a pretty good year a couple of years back. He got non-tendered, so there's always bullpen arms like that. Also, Taylor Clarke is a really interesting one from the Royals. He had a nice year, and he's only going to make about $2 million in ARB, so it was kind of a surprise that they non-tendered him. That dude needs to never throw his four-seam fastball ever again, though. I believe the expected slugging on that pitch last year was 750. So, yeah, and it was the second most thrown pitch. So, sinker slider.
750?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. You can double check me on that. Maybe I misread it, but
that's stinky.
Yeah. So there are always bullpen arms like that. Jacob Webb is kind of a meme.
Yeah.
But pretty good. He's still pretty good, and he's now available. So plenty of bullpen arms out there. There are some names like Chris Morel is pretty interesting. Obviously, Adolis Garcia as well. But I think I don't want to say the big one, but I think the one that kind of makes the most sense for the Mariners based on where their roster is at right now is probably Andy Ibanez.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah. So
the Mariners need a better option against the left-handed pitching off of their bench. Now, Ibanez wasn't particularly great against lefties this year. Just a 99 WRC plus, but in the past he has mashed lefties. And last year, or 2025, I've kind of already put it behind us now, so I kind of view it as last year. But this past season, Mitch Garver was your primary option off the bench to face lefties, and that was just not viable, frankly. So, Ibanez is the guy that stands out to me the most, as well as Ramon Urias, who obviously a pretty good defender, can play multiple spots in the infield. The Mariners have had interest in him in the past. So maybe that's a guy that they kick the tires on as well. And then, there's just so many relief arms. You never know what profile really stands out to the Mariners the most here, who they like and who they think they might have a tweak for. So it could literally be any of these guys or none of them.
Right. I do like Jacob Webb and Taylor Clarke quite a bit, but Ian Hamilton's got some really interesting qualities to him. But yeah, Ibanez is the guy who can play second. He can play third. So
he's actually not that bad of a defender.
No,
his arm
he's
sucks,
totally
but he's actually he actually has a really good range.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and with your questions right now being at second and third, you're going to give those shots as things sit right now to some rookies, to some young players. It would be nice to have that safety blanket there. Just a guy like, look, we can at least manage and have this guy fill in 3-4 times a week, and we can kind of survive until we get to July, and we can kind of add, hopefully we can add in July. So I think a player like Urias, like Ibanez, makes a lot of sense for the roster as it sits right now. Maybe in a couple of weeks they don't make any sense at all, and we're talking about Adolis Garcia, who would be a fun ad, and he and Randy are really good friends, and so is he and Julio. So there is actually some reason why Adolis might pick you, and it does feel like Adolis does have 1 year of magic left, but he's been bad recently. And then obviously Jonah
he's been
Heim
terrible.
Yeah. And then Jonah Heim is interesting just because you need a backup catcher, especially if you trade Harry. You trade Harry Ford, which is probably the top 100 prospect most likely to be traded this winter, then that's going to make a lot of sense. Now, the thing with Heim, though, is he going to want to sign here knowing he's the full-time backup? Like, no shot to start. Probably not. That might be a difficult.
Whereas there might be like a team out there like the Pirates or the whoever. That's just an example that might be willing to give him a shot to start.
Yeah, Heim's young enough that if he has a good year in 2026, he can go out there and presumably get 3 or 4 years at $10 million a year and really set himself up nice. So we'll see. But yeah, to me, it's the right-handed hitting infielders and it's the bullpen arms that are the most interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if you don't want to expose Cole Young to too many lefties, then I think Andy Ibanez would be a great platoon partner for him.
Yep.
A couple other names that I just want to throw out there. They don't really make sense for the roster right now, but Mike Tauchman, he got non-tendered by the White Sox. Lefty corner outfielder, which right now, there's the Dom Canzone, Luke Raleigh thing, so that doesn't really work. And then JJ Bleday is a guy that both you and I have liked for a while. Colby's he got non-tendered by the A's, so but again, left-handed hitting outfielder. So
throw Jake Fraley into that list too. Like he's a really solid fourth outfielder, but you just have so many left-handed hitting corner outfielders that it's kind of tough to snag another one and justify it on the roster build. You trade Luke Raley, you trade Dom Canzone, maybe.
All right, we're going to answer more of your questions here in just a moment, but first a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel and Doer. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Sailors, I got to tell you, I love a good pair of jeans, but I'm also very particular about my jeans. I need the fit to be right. If they're blue jeans especially, there's a very particular shade of light blue I'm looking for. And of course, I need them to be comfortable, right? I mean, that's the name of the game. And well, I just got my first pair of jeans from Doer, and they check off every single box. I got the Performance Denim Slims as well as a Pure Pima Vintage Pocket Tee, and they're both getting added to my regular rotation. Doer jeans have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. They're antibacterial, meaning your jeans stay fresh longer so you can wear more and wash less. And they're made with CoolMax, which regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture. And Doer combines classic jeans wear with the kind of comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. So it's the best of both worlds. And Doer are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. They invented the original performance denim. So simply put, Doer makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. Trust me, once you try these, they'll be your go-to. Get a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Go now to shopdoer.com/lockedonseattle. You'll get 15% off your first order. That's shop DUER.com/lockedonseattle for 15% off. Shopdoer.com/lockedonseattle. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen here on Mailbag Monday. And also thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Let's get back into your questions. Abraham wants to know, should the Mariners trade Luis Castillo to the Mets for Kodai Senga? Senga is younger, and with the pitching lab, they could possibly fix him. At worst, he could be a fifth starter, and Mets get a more reliable pitcher with experience to help their young arms. Well, Colby, this is an idea that you texted me about. I think you also tweeted about it, right? Mm-hmm. So you're on this train of trading Castillo for Senga. So what do you like that idea?
I mean, I like it as a thought experiment. I don't think that it's terribly likely or realistic for it to happen. Sure. But I like it for, the reasons that were mentioned there is that the Mets need some stability in their rotation. Senga has not been the same guy since his rookie year, and he's dealt with a big injury in there, and the walks have kind of been a problem. He's missing fewer bats, but we know that the stuff is really good. And we also know that he's making about $10 million less over the same 2 years as Castillo. And so it's one of those shots you take. If Castillo's the number 5, well, I think you want upside in your number 5 spot more so than you want safety. So, the risk is for the Mariners is that they trade their healthiest pitcher, believe it or not, for a guy who, like all the other 4 starters in the rotation, has missed significant time over the last 2 years. But they get arguably one of the best pitches in all of baseball, the Ghost Fork. And they add some swing and miss to their rotation, which is desperately needed. You guys watch that Blue Jays series? Now, granted, it's really hard to strike out the Blue Jays for anybody, but yeah,
I mean, even Blake Snell had issues striking out the Blue Jays. So
right. So again, it's probably more about that, but you need some more swing and miss in this pitching staff. You really do, because honestly, you don't really have the defense to support a contact heavy pitching staff. So yeah, I think it makes some sense, like on paper, but there are a myriad of reasons why this wouldn't happen. Like for example, the Mets are kind of in this weird spot that, like we saw yesterday, where they're kind of shedding some of their bigger contracts and they're kind of trying to, clear up future money. So maybe that's not as big of a deal because both of these guys only have 2 years left, but I don't think they're going to be willing to take on $10 million extra. I think if they trade Senga, they would be trying to move the contract. It would be their primary goal there. So I don't really know if that makes sense, but yeah, just like on paper as a thought experiment, it's a fun one because the Mets do need some stability. They do need just quality bulk innings out of their rotation, especially if they're going to run with as many young arms as they are currently slated to do. And Senga is a guy who, the star has fallen a little bit. He needs to be polished back up again. And there's a health concern there. And obviously we know the whole thing with the forkball, the splitter is that it can be rough on the elbow. At least that's kind of the popular narrative right now. I don't know if it's backed up by science or not. But I think it does make some sense on paper. And that's why I like it as a thought experiment. I think ultimately there are just too many, obstacles you have to overcome to actually get something like this cross the finish line. But yeah, I think this would be a fun, we talk about how do you dump Castillo, and it's like, well, probably can't. Maybe do a payroll swap like, Robbie Ray for Mitch Haniger. And this would kind of be that. You'd save about the same amount of money in the short term. And the only difference is that your club control is the same here. So it really is an interesting idea, but I just think there's too many obstacles to actually get it done.
The Heat Miser wants to know, when you say that a starting pitcher is a number 1, number 2, what is your criteria for that? Is a number 1 a top 30 pitcher, and number 2 a top 60, etc.? Is it based on some ranking criteria, or is it just based on vibes? Just curious. So Colby and I kind of have our own definition of like what's an ace, like what's a true ace, who's a number 1, what constitutes a number 2. And so we say that, and I know that sometimes confuses people. So for me, what a true ace is a guy that you absolutely are worried about, like in a playoff series, for example, like Tarek Skubal, right? You are game planning around that guy specifically, whether it's Skubal, whether it's Paul Skeens, Garrett Crochet, maybe you want to throw Yamamoto or Christopher Sanchez in there as well. But really it's Skeens, Skubal, and Crochet. Like, to me, those are like the 3, and Zach Wheeler when he's healthy. Those are like the 4 guys that like I'm planning around them.
The aces are so good that they impact games they're not even pitching in.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like I don't view Hunter Brown, Cole Reagans, those guys in the same light, but those guys are still number ones.
They're ones, yeah.
Yeah. So I hope that makes sense. And then, you just kind of go down the list. There isn't really like a specific cutoff point for like, a 1 and a 2, like, oh, the 1s are like the top 20 guys, and then the 2s are, 21 through 40 and all that. It's not really like that. It's just
no, because if that were true, then there would be 30 number 1s in baseball, and there isn't. Like, I know technically there is, but there isn't. Like you said, there's 4 or 5 aces. There's probably, I don't know, 10 number 1s. Number 2s, there's probably only like 20 or 30 of them. So yeah, there's a ton of, to me, like, you start with the number 5 and you work your way up. The number 5 is a guy that I'm hoping goes 5 innings and gives up 4 or less. Like that's really what I'm hoping. So, there's plenty of number 5s. Number 4 is just a little bit better than that. And it's just kind of a vibe, it really is just kind of like, hey, how do I feel about this guy, pitching in against, other pitchers that are simple. Like when Scooble's on the mound, it doesn't matter who you're throwing. You don't have a good shot to win that game unless you're the 2025 Mariners, apparently. So yeah, like it just doesn't matter. Whereas like Logan Gilbert is probably going to outdo most other pitchers in this league. But if he's going up against Garrett Cole, like he's probably going to make a mistake or two, and he's probably not going to get away with it. And that mistake or two could end your game. Like aces are so good that if your pitcher makes a mistake, the game could be over right there. Like, so it really, again, aces are a unique brand. Number 1s are less than that. I would say Christopher Sanchez is the number 1. Number 1s get like Cy Young votes. Number 2s.
I mean, Christopher Sanchez is really good. So yeah, he might be.
I think do it again and then we'll talk. But like, I like number 2s get Cy Young votes. Number 3s might get a 10th place vote every once in a while. 4s are just like 2.5 win pitchers, I think, and 5s are kind of just they're high 4 or mid 4 ERA type of guys. So like it's not really statistical. And sometimes when we talk about like this guy's a number 3 or whatever, we're talking more about stuff and like command and control than actual data. So it's a bit of a it's a bit of when we assign pitchers, they're an ace, they're a 1, they're a 2. It's not scientific, at least not for us.
Just like quickly going down the list here. Like, so again, I would say the aces are Scooble, Skeens, Crochet, like those type of dudes. Yeah. The 1s are like the Logan Webbs and the Max Frieds and the Hunter Browns and the Cole Reagans of the world. Then the number 2s I would say are like Freddie Peralta. And then there's like, the low end 2s, like high end 3s that are like
Joe Ryan,
Ranger Suarez.
Yeah.
Framber, I think I'd put in that range as well.
Yep. Kirby,
Nick Pivetta. Usually this year, Pivetta was more like a low end 1 to a 2, but typically Evaldi. Like I'd put Pivetta in there. Yeah. Evaldi is a 1. Evaldi this year was an ace, but availability, bit of a problem there. So
knocks you down a peg or 2.
Yeah.
So
so hopefully that clears that up, because I know some people do get confused when we use that terminology, and that's just our personal definitions of what those guys are. That's not based on anything. That's just us. That's just how we feel about those guys. And we have Colby and I have a pretty like similar definition of what aces are, what number 1s are.
Yeah, when Ty and I are talking, like he says that guy's a 2, I know exactly what type of pitcher he's talking about. Like so it really is kind of a beauty in the eye of the beholder type of thing. But like to me, like just to kind of go down the list here for the Mariners, just to put it in those terms, I would say Brian Wu is a 2, high end 2, maybe a 1 on a certain day. I would say Logan Gilbert's, after the year he just had, probably a mid 2 with number 1 ceiling. George Kirby is a 2 or a 3, somewhere in that range, depending on what the day is. I would say Miller is probably a 4 overall, but he could be a number 3. Castillo's a 4. I think is how I would, maybe even a low end 3 for Castillo because he's so dependable.
Yeah, I'd say Castillo's a low end 3. And then like Miller to me has like the ceiling of a 2. Like we've seen it. But yeah, I think
he was a 2 for 2024, statistically speaking.
Yeah, and he was a 2 for a good chunk of the postseason as well.
Yeah, sure. 2, 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, during the regular season this year, he was like a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
So, like, by the way, just perfect example of this. Emerson Hancock is a 6. He's not a 5. He's a 6. So, like,
which is to say minor league depth.
Put him in the minors. If he has to make some starts for you because of injuries, fine, whatever. He might help you out of the bullpen at some point, but like, not a guy you want to even consider starting playoff games. Like, aces, 1s, and 2s, they're starting games 1 and 2 of the playoffs.
All right. We got a few more of your questions to answer in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is back, and there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. It's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I bought tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, download Gametime today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, we have a Patreon. It's called Control the Zone. And on there, we talk Mariners, Seahawks, all that good stuff. For more information, go to patreon.com/Control the Zone. Link in the description of this episode. Matthew wants to know, what were your guys' thoughts on non-tendering Gregory Santos? It felt like that was going to be the case after your interview with Ryan Divish. Yeah, not surprised after talking to Divish. I mean, the Mariners just don't really have much of a tolerance for guys that they feel are just not really putting the work in. Right, we've seen it with Luis Urias. Kyle Lewis is a guy that they felt wasn't putting enough work in to get back. There's been many instances of this in the Dipoto era where they just, if you're not putting in the work, we're going to cut ties. We're going to move on. Jesse Winker.
Also kind of Gino Suarez after 2022. They were not thrilled about how he came into camp in 2023, and they were willing to move on as a result at the end of the year.
Yeah. I think Divish said something about that after the trade happened. So, yeah. So yeah, it doesn't come as a surprise. Like if we had not talked to Divish about that and that had not been reported beforehand, then yeah, I would have been a little surprised by that, just because like it's $20,000 more than the league minimum that he got, or that he was going to get projected to get.
I think if we hadn't talked to Divish and that news came out, I would have been like, they must be upset with him about like how he worked his way back. Though I think I would have come to that conclusion because it's
such a minimal increase,
right? And we talked about this, when they were setting up the playoff and the taxi squad. It's like Gregory Santos isn't even on the taxi squad.
Yeah,
like, so very clearly the Mariners were just done with that relationship, and it's not surprising. It just kind of follows up everything that they've done in recent years. If they think a guy's not putting in the work, they think he's, maybe not a bad influence, probably not the right word, but like they're not going to put up, they're going to move on from guys who they don't feel are committed and are putting in the work and all that. And that's not even talking about the guys that have been, privately have been told, like, you got to step it up, man. You really have to do some work. And we're not going to tell you who those players are. We don't know all the players, but we've heard some things about some guys, but whatever, they put in the work, and I feel like everybody gets like one, like, hey, look, we're not really thrilled with this. We need you to do this. And if they don't do it, then the Mariners are going to try and find a way to move on. They've done it pretty much every time.
All right. Zach wants to know, are you surprised that the M's moved Luke Heyman this quickly? The system catcher depth is still solid with Grant J, Josh Caron, and Luke Stevenson, but a college catcher with some hype seems like a lot for a reliever with clear red flags. So talking about the Alex Hoppe trade, the reliever that the Mariners got from the Red Sox for their 14th round draft pick, Luke Heyman, out of the University of Florida this past year. Heyman was a top 20 guy on our list. We liked him. There was some probability there, but at the end of the day, I mean, he's a 14th round pick. I'm not losing sleep over that.
It also says Hoppe has a real chance. We think Hoppe has a real chance to help us as soon as 2026. Heyman is a couple years away, and we've signed Cal Raleigh to an extension. We have Harry Ford currently. We spent a first round pick on Luke Stevenson. We still have Grant J. We still have Josh Caron.
Now Grant J might wind up in a corner, but
right. But whatever. I mean, Heyman might too. Like it's just one of those things. Heyman is probably a backup catcher long term.
Yeah.
And you have an opportunity to add a player that you think has high leverage ceiling. And I think the Mariners believe that about Hoppe. And it's a guy who could help you as early as this year. These are the type of moves you make. And this is why you draft. This is why you take the 14th round seriously, because you never know what could happen. And by the way, if Hoppe stinks and, Heyman is like a solid backup catcher, who's going to care? Nobody. Nobody's going to care, because the Mariners, by the way, there's one thing you should count on the Mariners to do. They can develop some catching. Like, it's not just Cal Raleigh. Look at what they did to Nola. Look at how they held Tom Murphy. I mean, obviously Harry Ford, and now they have Luke Stevenson. Like, the Mariners can identify and develop catching. They're pretty good at it, pretty consistently good at it. So don't worry about it. It's whatever. I didn't know who Luke Heyman was 4 months ago. I'm not going to shed a tear about it. To be fair, I also didn't know who Alex Hoppe was 3 days ago. So,
no,
whatever. But
no, to me, what's most interesting about that deal is that Hoppe was Rule 5 eligible.
Mm.
The Mariners probably felt that they weren't going to be able to get him, that he wasn't going to be able to fall to where they were picking. And so they made him a priority. And not just that, but they also made it so they don't have to keep him on the 26-man roster the whole time without, running the risk of having to give him back to the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Now he's just in the organization. They can do whatever they want with him. They can do whatever they want with his options. So, yeah. So that to me just says more about like how they feel about Hoppe, them prioritizing him, all that. And the cost to me, like, yeah, we had Heyman a bit higher than most people, but like it's a 14th round pick. All right, last question of the day here comes from Ryan. Who are your top 5 realistic choices for left-handed and right-handed bullpen options to acquire? Well, I don't have a top 5. There are just so many names. I could not possibly condense that down to a top 5, at least not on the spot. So I'm just going to give you a bunch of names that I like. The left-handed reliever side of things is interesting to me because, like, we just did our division by division trade preview series, and like we talked about quite a few of these guys. It just depends on like what shelf are the Mariners going to be shopping from in that regard. And are they going to look to address kind of like both of the things that they're looking for, a high leverage arm and a lefty? Because like it's been reported that they want both, right? They want a high leverage arm and they want a lefty. Well, you could just do both of those things in one move. One player could fill both of those needs, right? So, if that's the case, then that would be like Adrian Morejon from the Padres. Is he even available? Who knows? Garrett Clevenger, that's going to cost quite a bit. Are the Mariners willing to pay that price for 2 years of him? Matt Strom, like, is Dave Dombrowski actually going to be realistic and reasonable with his asking price? There's also Jose Alvarado and Tanner Banks there as well. With the Braves, listen on like Dylan Lee. So I have a bunch of questions. There's a lot of guys that I like. There's a lot of lefty relievers specifically on the trade market that I like, or specifically guys that maybe they're not on the market, but like specifically guys you would have to trade for if you're going to acquire them that I like. And then there's like a couple of guys in free agency as well, like Danny Coulombe and Hoppe Milner, the two Rangers lefties that are free agents now. And then righties, there's a billion guys. Again, I would keep an eye on the Rockies because the Mariners did quite a bit of work on them leading up to the deadline. I would keep an eye on like Juan Mejia, Jimmy Herget, those guys.
Yep. Yeah, the righties, there's a ton, and to try and narrow it down to 5, like a top 5,
it's impossible. I don't have a top 5. Sorry.
No, that's just top 5, right-handed relievers that might be available. I don't know, because we can't even say like, oh, well, Pete Fairbanks, like, are the Mariners going to spend 11, 12 million bucks on a reliever? Probably not, but they're also making it a priority. So might they? I don't know. Like, it's one of those things. There's just, you're better off just asking about like specific guys, but like, because the Mariners aren't going to shop, I think that's just my assumption, at the Helsley, certainly not the Diaz Suarez, but probably not the Helsley, probably not the
Helsley might wind up getting a contract to start.
Yeah. From the Tigers.
From the Tigers,
interesting. Tarek Skubal's a lefty. But
got our high leverage bullpen arm here. It's Tarek Skubal.
Yeah, but like Chris Martin is an interesting guy. If he's going to pitch, we don't know.
Yeah.
But like, whatever. The lefties are the guys that you're probably gonna have to trade for. It's not a great class of them in the free agent market right now. The righties, it's just kind of like, who do you like? Take your pick. And who are you willing to spend the money on? Because like, it's really easy to point to like Paul Sewald and be like, oh, I want Paul back. Like, not great last year, but do you even want to spend Kyle Finnegan money? Like, if you're not going to spend Diaz Suarez money, do you want to spend Finnegan money? Do you want to spend, Fairbanks money? Or
I mean, there's a couple of guys that I've mentioned here on the show and on the Patreon as well that I would be down to take a shot on, like Michael Kopech.
Yeah.
Jacob Junis.
I like Sean Armstrong. And then there's always guys that you could take a shot on. Like, I wouldn't mind them taking a shot on Alexis Diaz. But I'll tell you the one. I'll give you 2 righties in trade. Matt Festa. Yes, that Matt Festa. And Edwin Uceta. Uceta is a guy who misses a ton of bats. He's got plenty of years of club control. He does it a little bit differently than other guys in the bullpen. And that is something that I wouldn't mind adding. I wouldn't mind if the Mariners went out this winter and they were like, yeah, we have enough sinker slider guys. Let's go get 4-seam curveball. Let's go get somebody who throws straight over the top instead of this low 3/4 that we really like. Or let's go get somebody who throws below 3/4. Let's go get a submariner. Like, let's mix up the looks a little bit because obviously, Munoz and Bizardo and Brash, they don't have the same stuff, right? They don't throw from the same. I get that, but it's all pretty similar. It's 2-seamers and it's sliders. And so it's one of those things where it's like, some variety is nice. Like, give these teams a different look. We saw in the playoffs how nice it could be to be like, oh, well, this is a guy you haven't seen, or like for the last 3 innings, you've watched guys thrown from the 28-degree arm angle, and they're all throwing 98-mile-an-hour 2-seamers with wipeout sliders. Like, eventually you pick that stuff up. And if you see it every single day for 5 days in a row, it's a lot easier to hit. So how about, hey, here's a guy throwing straight over the top, and he's throwing 95-mile-an-hour fastballs up in the zone, and then he's got a 12-6 curveball that he works over the top of that. Like, I think those are the type of things, those little changes that you can make to the bullpen where it's not the same profile every single arm that comes out of your pen. I would like to see them add. And that's why I like Uceta, who does throw from a lower arm slot, but his big out pitch is a changeup, which is different than what you have in this bullpen. So I do think that, the Mariners probably going to prioritize the sinker slider guys. They're really good at that, and that's what they like. That's their bread and butter. But I think there's some merit to mixing things up, and that's why a guy like Devin Williams would be interesting. But I'm not giving Devin Williams 3 years, which is probably what he's going to get. So, yeah, I think the trade market is where you're going to get the lefty. But I kind of with Ty, I think why not just, get both at the same time, because the lefties that we just talked about, the Stroms and the Clevengers, like in Morejon, they are high leverage and they're lefties. And so you just knock that out and cross out 2. And then maybe if you get a Clevenger, right, in trade or whatever, you get a Strom, pick the lefty, right? Maybe then you are willing to go out into free agency and spend $6 million or whatever on whoever you think Ryan Stanek is, whoever you think the undervalued asset is. I think that makes more sense to do it that way. So we'll see.
All right, that is going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day. We'll see you next time. Peace.